Hey guys, welcome to the video. And if you like what you're seeing, like the video, drop some comments. I'd love to hear any feedback on this from other movie critics, people that enjoy films that make lists like this or that ever have thought of them. Would love to hear some feedback on this. That'd be cool. But see on the screen here is obviously what the topic of today and my kind of favorite 101 best films and the little asterisk saying using no sequels. I think there's actually one sequel in here, but if I used a sequel, I didn't use the original, and I tried to use, and I didn't use any, like I wouldn't do, for instance, the one I did do is Evil Dead 2, right? I didn't do Evil Dead 1, or like Back to the Future I did, even though I think the sequel is close to or as good. It's one of the few where the sequel rivals the original. I didn't use it, things like that. So I wanted to dive through this and just get other people's perspectives. Also, a lot of people on YouTube or social media, anywhere, right? They're always looking for cool movie recommendations. So, if you're looking for films to watch, here's some ones that I think are great. It's not necessarily in chronological order, but my top 10 there is kind of my top 10. I did about 70 movies, and then I did about 30 comedies to make up my 100. So about 30% are in the comedy genre. But I have Field of Dreams, The Crow, the 94 movie. Obviously, I always preface this by saying all of the sequels were garbage, in my opinion. And a lot of that has to do with Brandon Lee. But it's like that with a lot of franchises or series where they have success with the first one and then they just Shawshank, which could actually be replaced at number one all day long. Good Will Hunting, Man on Fire, the Denzel version. Dazed and Confused, which I probably could have put in comedies, but it's just got like such a story, and it's more about the times than necessarily the comedy. But it probably could be in there as well. But that's just kind of a go-to movie of mine. Enemy of the State with Hackman and Will Smith, I thought was awesome. Sandlot, one of my favorite, if not my favorite, kids and families movie. Runaway Journey, Jury, again, Hackman, Cusack, and why am I drawing a blank on the other? Dustin Hoffman were excellent. Son of a Woman, Devil's Advocate, a couple Pacino films. Again, these aren't all necessarily in chronological order. The top 10 or 15 is pretty accurate for me personally, but then I just kind of went and just to preface this, guys, if you didn't read the description or see the post on another, on my Facebook or something, I just kind of thought this up the other night. I sat down in about 30 or 35 minutes and typed this out. So after like the top 10 or 15, I just started thinking of different, genres of movies or different actors, and I didn't necessarily put them in chronological order. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and I found it kind of amazing how all kinds of movies I would normally just like in random conversation, if I'm at a flea market, I see a shelf of DVDs and I'm sitting there with a friend, I'd be like, oh, that's probably in my top 100. It's amazing how many of those I actually left out that didn't even make the top 100. It's pretty crazy. Let's you know how many movies I watch, right? But let's keep going down the list. We were at where? I'm sorry. We were at Goodfellas, Rain Man, Goodfellas, obviously, Devil's Advocate, Rain Man, Rounders, which is one of my favorite Matt Damon and Edward Norton roles. Both, of course, I have a Matt Damon one higher on the list in Good Will Hunting. I like a lot of Matt Damon stuff, and it's amazing how many of those didn't make it on the room. Boiler Room, which is a go-to. Love that film if you've never seen it. Equalizer, another Denzel. Independence Day was just a monumental film for its time, and I can still watch it to this day. National Treasure, good kind of mystery family movie. Goonies, another great family. Princess Bride, that's where I started thinking of a couple of those, which again, you could probably put in with comedies, but it's a great kind of kids story as well. Evil Dead 2, which I think was one of the first that I remember that I would categorize as like horror comedy, right? The first Evil Dead 1 was made in more of a horror sense. This one almost was written more of a comedy sense in the acting. Boondock Saints, which actually probably should be higher if I was going in chronological order. That's probably a top 15 of mine. Face Off, The Rock, Con Air, The Conjuring. When you get in, I had to mix in a couple horror movies because I like a lot of horror and, paranormal type of stuff. The Sound of Freedom, which I saw in theaters last year, which was great. The Dark Knight, Heat, of course, Pacino and De Niro, Bronx Tale, great film. Never Ending Story, Die Hard, American Beauty. I think American Beauty is one of those ones with the writing and the screenplay and things like that made it really good. Lucy's just always been kind of a favorite of mine. Scarlett Johansson's great, gorgeous, right? Good actress, but it's just the theme of that movie of having your brain operate at 100% capability, or even double or triple, and the things she just really cool and rings home with me. I love it. Casino, classic. Roadhouse, got to be on there. Remember the Titans is great. Probably if it was ranking these chronologically higher than 35. Ghostbusters, I don't know how you could not have on your top 100. Home Alone, Annabelle, going back to kind of horror theme. Forrest Gump, Black Hawk Down, Final Destination. Seeing that in theaters when that first came out was one of the movies where like the theater actually erupted during some of the scenes, and like the people's screams were so real. It's probably great no matter how you see it, but it's one of those ones when you see it in theaters. There's very few times that the audience reaction is one of the most memorable things when I go to see a movie. Scarface, The Matrix, Last Samurai, Dances with Wolves, Back to the Future, Fugitive, 42, the Jackie Robinson story. Dead Presidents was phenomenal. E.T. I have Rocky, and again, could probably put multiple Rockies, but I went with just the original. I'm not using sequels. And again, if I did use a sequel, I think the only one, like I said, is Evil Dead 2. I didn't use the original, right? Patch Adams, Jerry Maguire, The Karate Kid, the original. Beetlejuice, another great kind of family movie. Hook, Wanted was one of the better action movies that I like and I related to that I've seen in the last, 15, 20 years. That made my list. Crash is another one, and that one's probably the best on here for actual writing, screenplay. Yes, the acting and everything tied together so nice, but it all tied back into the writing. Thank You for Not Smoking is an under the radar one that probably wouldn't be on most people's lists. And again, probably could go more in the comedy realm. A Knight's Tale. I always love that. Heath Ledger in that is phenomenal. Storyline's great. Braveheart, self-explanatory. Dead Poet Society. If you've never seen that, Robin Williams, among others, great in that. The Illusionist, which I had another Edward Norton one on here with Rounders. And a lot of people would think of his roles in American History X or Fight Club, right? And those didn't actually make my top 100, which very well could be on a lot of people's. I liked him in The Illusionist really good, and I thought that was really well written. Training Day, Jaws, The Breakfast Club, Pursuit of Happiness, No Country for Old Men, Pulp Fiction, and The Lost Boys. So that's what made my regular films. And again, there was a few comedies sprinkled in, but a lot of those had drama or different aspects to it as well. Some action, some horror, right? Even though so some of those were kind of in between. So the other 31 I put in my top 100 were all comedies. And again, these first handful, probably the first 10, are in relative chronological order of where I would rank them, like 1 through 10. Then after that, I just kind of started spitballing off the top of my brain. Talladega Nights is one of my all-time favorites. Better Off Dead, greatest 80s comedy in my opinion. Close second is Arthur, and I could probably switch those either way depending on how I'm feeling or what I feel like watching and what type of humor. But they're both go-tos that I watch probably once a year at minimum. Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy. Tropic Thunder, Step Brothers, Horrible Bosses, Coming to America, the original. Tommy Boy, Austin Powers, and then Super Troopers, Wedding Crashers, Office Space, Dodgeball, Pineapple Express. These are all just classic comedies. Anybody that knows comedies, I'd find it hard to believe you don't like a majority of these or wouldn't have these on your list of the top 30 comedies, right? School, Zombieland, Clerks, Big Lebowski, Bill and Ted's. And that could even go as more of a kid's movie, but that was just kind of a funny family movie that again probably has to do with my era as well. Happy Gilmore, and I'm surprised, but I had to at least have one Adam Sandler on here. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Zack and Miri, The Girl Next Door with Alicia Cuthbert, and why can't I think of the actor's name right now? He's on one other movie I think on here, but The Hangover, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Fanboys, American Pie, The Other Guys, Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, and Monty Python and the Holy Grail has to be on there. That's why it went to 101. I had forgot about this one and it popped in my head. Most people do a top 100. And then really quickly, in addition to the 101, while I was sitting there thinking, these popped in my head and I'm like, well, maybe they would be in my top 100, but let's just do a different thing for documentaries. And I put my favorite 10. And of course, these are going to be relevant to the type of content you're into or the type of, hobbies or interests or passions and likes that you have, right? But I thought What is a Woman by Matt Walsh was great. The Greatest Lie Ever Sold by Candace Owens was great. Fahrenheit 9/11 and Bowling for Columbine. I'm not a big Michael Myers, the director, fan personally, but he's created some great documentaries. And I love the whole 9/11 topic. I dive deep into that. The mass shooting, I guess, especially one of the earlier ones, the psyche behind that and the warning signs, that type of stuff interests me. Making a Murderer, which I was kind of following when it first came out and got hot. The Stephen Avery story there was phenomenal. The Convicting a Murderer recent documentary by Candace Owens is great. It kind of shows you the other side of that. The Last Dance. I'm surprised to probably only have one sports thing in here. As you notice, there was a decent amount of sports movies in there with 42. Remember the Titans, Field of Dreams, right? And even in the comedies, I thought about this after leaving out Bull Durham and Major League, two great baseball comedies that didn't make it in there, unfortunately. Bull Durham would probably, for me, rank a little higher of Major League, but I think Major League has more mass appeal, and more people would probably pick that one of the two. And these last three are all around UFOs and Area 51 and stuff, as you know on my channel. If you scroll through further, I have a cool, project or video I created specifically on my research. And within my research, I just listed three of my favorite documentaries, and that kind of had some lasting, impact in terms of evidence or credibility, or just something that was definitely proven later after the fact. A lot of that with Bob Lazar. Stan Romanek had the most encounters and most documented different things in history in terms of unexplained encounters. And there's paranormal, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a movie made about it, right? Close Encounters, right? There's four different kinds of close encounters. The first kind, the second kind. So Stan has a great history of all different ones. And you guys may or may not know that. I talk about that in my video, but that's also pretty cool. So for documentaries, The Moment of Contact might actually be my favorite with the UFO ones. That's a 1996 instance in a town called Varginha, Brazil, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. That one was really, really good. But yeah, I thought that would be really cool to share. So would love to hear again some of your thoughts, some things you might say, oh, cool, I'd love to check that out. Thanks for the recommendation. Or some things I left off my list that you would have on yours. That'd be awesome.